to feed into the discussion related to the upcoming Commission proposal on the right to repair, and more specifically to look at how consumer rights and guarantees can be strengthened to promote repair or other remedies. So, first, I would like to ask our experts to take the floor for maximum 7 minutes. Our time is limited. 7 means 7. And then there will be 2 rounds of questions for 2 minutes each. And in the first round, it will be question time for EPP, S&D, and Renew. And on the second round, for Greens, ID, ECR, and the left. So, I think we can start. So first, I would like to ask Anna Gallego to take the floor. She's Director General from the European Commission, DG Just. Please, the floor is yours for 7 minutes.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, honorable members, ladies and gentlemen. I would like first to thank you for this opportunity to have an exchange with you on this important topic of sustainable consumption of goods. I also want to thank you for the resolution on the right to repair that was prepared by the INCO committee and adopted in the European Parliament plenary in April this year. Now is a very timely moment to have this important discussion. As you know, the initiative on sustainable consumption of goods, promoting repair and reuse, the so-called right to repair initiative, is one of the key legislative initiatives in the current Commission. We know that unsustainable consumption of goods leads to unnecessary use of resources and increased waste and CO2 emissions. Based on the overall Commission objective of the green transition, it was announced in the Commission work programme for 2022 that more repair and consumer products will extend the useful life of goods and therefore further the circular economy. Thus, the Commission largely shares the concerns expressed in the recent resolution of the Parliament. The aspects brought up in the resolution deliver not only on the European Green Deal, but also on the Commission's overall strategy to fulfil the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. In its preparatory work on the package of proposals aiming at a more sustainable consumption of goods, the Commission has taken good note of the 3 dimensions stressed in the European Parliament's resolution. Firstly, the products need to be designed to last longer and to be repairable. Secondly, that consumers are empowered to choose repairable products. And thirdly, that consumers' rights lead to a longer use of goods. The Commission has tackled these 3 dimensions, covering both the supply side and the demand side on the issue in 3 different legislative initiatives. First, on the supply side, the Commission adopted the Eco-Design for Sustainable Products Regulation proposal on the 30th of March 2022. This proposal aims to extend the lifetime of products so that it becomes regular practice to design products that are durable and fit for reuse, for refurbishment and for repair. Secondly, and on the demand side, the Commission adopted a proposal for directive on empowering consumers for the green transition, also on the same day, and which your committee is currently working on. This proposal aims to provide consumers with better information on durability and repairability of products at the point of sale, so as to make informed, sustainable decisions. And thirdly, also on the demand side, in the after-sales context, the Commission is currently working on the initiative under discussion here today to promote sustainability of consumer goods after sale. All these 3 initiatives taken together will contribute to a more sustainable consumption. Now, the initiative on sustainable consumption of goods aims to increase the lifetime of repairable consumer goods and to avoid the premature disposal of these goods. The Commission may propose changes to the legal guarantee framework regulated in the Sales of Goods Directive in order to promote repair over replacement. We may also propose instruments to make repair more accessible and attractive for consumers when the legal guarantee no longer applies, for example, by increasing transparency on the conditions for repair. Of course, the Commission is following the better regulation guidelines in the preparation of the initiative and is therefore working on an impact assessment. So, as you would understand, I cannot be more specific on this point right now, but we still need a bit more time to further improve our analysis to ensure the high quality of the initiative. As announced in the Commission Work Programme for next year, for 2023, the initiative will be adopted in the first months of 2023. I am very pleased to see that the European Parliament and the Commission are on the same wavelength as regards measures aiming at a more sustainable consumption of goods. I therefore strongly count on the European Parliament to support the Commission proposals already being discussed by the legislators, as well as the one that will follow early next year, and to deal with them in a swift manner. It is important to pursue this common goal of sustainable consumption. We look forward to working closely with you in this matter. Unfortunately, I will have to leave shortly due to a very last-minute important commitment, but my colleague Salazar Samoinin, Director for Civil Justice, will be happy to take questions and comments after the interventions of the other experts. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Anna. Before I will ask the next speaker to take the floor, I would like to say that the best movie I have seen during the last 8 years was produced by Beuk. It was about geo-blocking and how bad is geo-blocking. So now I would like to ask Ms. Ursula Bach from Beuk to take the floor. The floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, for this kind introduction. And may I say the movie was inspired by your legislative proposal and your initiative and vision on this respect. Thank you so much for that. Good afternoon, members of the European Parliament, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for having invited Beuk. I would like to start my presentation, next slide please, with a short snapshot of what consumers think about repair and how they feel about that. So I think it's important to notice that according to a behavioral study of the European Commission, consumers are ready to pay more for more durable and repairable products. Nearly 80% of Europeans think that manufacturers should be required to make it easier to repair digital devices and to replace their individual parts. According to the findings of a project that we are running together with other stakeholders, which is called PROMPT, the most important barriers that consumers face when they want to repair their devices are related to the price of repairs, very expensive, the lack of good repair infrastructure, you don't find easily good repair facilities and services, and the low availability of spare parts. There are a lot of other figures, but we don't have time to go through them, but just to pick some of the most important messages, I think, about consumers for this hearing today. Next slide, please. So what is the right to repair? I think it's really important to see that this is a horizontal objective, and I think, as just underlined by Mrs. Gallego, this is not only consumer rights and consumer contract law, but it's really important to foster a true culture of repair in Europe, and there is a lot of different legislative areas that need to be looked at. And it's not only product legislation and consumer law, but I would like to add maybe also intellectual property law. We just have a new proposal for a design directive, which is framing how long design is protected in order to let spare parts be produced by other stakeholders, not the right holders. So this is also an important element. So the proposal that is going to be tabled in the first quarter now of next year is only one piece of the puzzle. Next slide, please. So very, very diverse are these elements that make the right to repair, so to speak. We spoke already about improving product design, which is the absolute necessary starting point, but we also need to take into account the legal protection against, for example, commercial practices that can lead to early obsolescence. We know that information to consumers about repairability and durability is very important. The availability of the repair information as such to consumers, but also to repair services, is essential. Availability of spare parts, and very important, longer legal guarantee periods. I just chose a few of these elements. Next slide, please. I skipped that one because I think Mrs. Gallego covered the state of play. I just wanted to underline one essential point here. The Sales of Good Directive, which basically is the framework for the legal guarantees, was revised not so long ago and entered into application only this year. Unfortunately, it's really a missed opportunity. I have to say that very clearly, because basically what the Commission proposed and the legislators then didn't go much further is a minimum period of 2 years legal guarantee period. But we know that the legal guarantee period, which includes a right to repair, because if there is a lack of conformity, consumers can ask for repair, that this is a very important point of motivation also for producing longer lasting products, and it's probably not the right approach that this is only for 2 years. Next slide, please. So these are our recommendations about how to improve the framework for durable and repairable products and consumer rights in that respect, because durability and repairability, they go hand in hand. As I said, 2-year guarantee period is insufficient for more durable products. We need longer guarantee periods, and that means product-specific mandatory guarantee periods that should be established. We think that currently it's really a very big opportunity with the eco-design being under revision. What we see is necessary is that there should be a link between these product-specific rules that include repairability or durability, and they should be linked to the civil law, consumer rights, contract law framework. So these implementing measures of the Eco-Design Directive, they could be taken into account when specifying how long should the specific product-related guarantee periods last, so that a fridge, for example, has a longer guarantee period than a toy, etc. So this is one of our proposals. Next slide, please. Other proposals related to sales law, again, is an extension of the reversal of the burden of proof, because we know that for consumers it's very hard to impossible to prove that there was a defect when it comes to complex and particularly also connected products. So this must be improved. Second point is really important. It's a direct producer liability on top of the trader's responsibility. We all know that the current market realities are such that it's not the trader who is in a position to decide about the product durability. The design, the repair features of a product is not the trader. But according to sales law, it is still only the trader that is the reference point. And actually, this is a demand of BEUC since more than 20 years, that it should also be the producer who becomes liable in case of non-conformity. Other more detailed measures to promote repair within the hierarchy of remedies of the sales proposal, Mrs. Gallego also referred to that, is that we think the so-called proportionality test could be changed and improved so that traders cannot easily refuse repair. So if a consumer says, I think this is something that can be repaired, it should not be easy for the trader to say, well, it's too costly for me, I cannot do it. So we need to improve that. Excluding replacements in case of minor defects would be, from our point of view, absolutely fair and acceptable. This is not the case for the time being, but we could accept that. Introducing an obligation to carry out the repair within a fixed time limit of 15 days would help to make repair more attractive for consumers, because they would know there cannot be an everlasting repair and I will never get my product back again if it's limited to 15 days, for example. And in certain cases, the consumer should have a right to a replacement product so that he still or she still can go on, for example, using a washing machine or something else if there is a longer repair expected. And a last important point, which is again something that links the green and the digital transition, it's about software updates, because we know that we will create a lot of waste if we do not have software updates, because we need to establish cybersecurity. There is a total failure in the market currently, and now finally the Commission has addressed it with the recent cybersecurity resilience proposal. That is very good, but updates need to be provided for a certain amount of time, otherwise these connected products will not be safe. And many of these items, I am happy to say, have been included in the European Parliament in this House's resolution that Mrs. Gallego mentioned of April 22, on the right to repair. So that is very good, and we call on the European Parliament to keep up its ambition. And I think I can close here because I know the chair is already looking at me. I would have had some other points on product labeling, but they rather belong to the empowerment proposal and have been already proposed, and there are very important amendments pending from this committee, and I would just encourage you as parliamentarians to keep up the ambition. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And next I would like to ask Mr. Pedro Oliveira from Business Europe to take the floor. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the European Parliament for inviting Business Europe to this important debate. Dear honourable members of this committee, dear ladies and gentlemen, business has been very supportive of fostering sustainable consumption, and sustainable consumption is not only about the product itself, but also the way it's produced, its life cycle, and also the way it is procured or is supplied. So there's a lot of elements into this equation. So companies have no choice whether or not they should be sustainable, but they have to be sustainable because otherwise consumers turn elsewhere to buy their products. Investors will not invest in them. Shareholders will not be very happy. Banks are not giving loans to companies which are not sustainable, nor are insurers providing their services to companies. So this is definitely a trend that is essential for companies. Now, in this context, we have welcomed several measures stemming from the Commission, which will improve the situation, namely on the sustainability on the production side, on the procuring of and managing of products and components for companies. There is the sustainable eco-design, has been mentioned already, the empowering consumers as well. The due diligence, because it's also an important measure that has been proposed this year, also run by Director General Gallego on this. And so there's a combination of measures that are aimed at tackling and also enabling more sustainability. Now, specifically on the repairability. Of course, it's very obvious that if products can be repaired in the long run, we increase their longevity, we have more reduction of wastes, we also allow more reuse, and for return goods, they can also become sellable via refurbished business models. They are also expanding. So there's a lot of positives. But sometimes I have the feeling we forget that since 20 years, when we're talking about these debates, since 20 years we have a right to repair enshrined in EU law. So there is a right to repair. Maybe we need some rebranding of this discussion. This came with the Sale of Goods Directive, and it already entitles consumers within the 2 years of guarantee period to have a repair, replacement, or the other remedies at its disposal. Of course, any initiative that comes on top of this right that is already existing needs to take into account some trade-offs, because one of them is, of course, the circularity, safety as well, because we cannot have consumers sometimes having to repair goods that are dangerous to them, because some products involve chemicals, involve energy, electricity, so this could be dangerous for them and can put their safety in harm's way. My colleague Ursula, she mentioned intellectual property rights, so these are also very important. Of course, these are one of the enablers of innovation in Europe, and watering these down would also put at stake our competitiveness. We need to be able to look into the alignment and to have some alignment between all the initiatives that some of them I mentioned, but all the other ones that will come up soon. So it's important that we don't have overlapping requirements. And also there is a question, a trade-off on the price, because Ursula mentioned that consumers are willing to have more repairability, but to which extent will they are willing to pay the price? Because there's other studies, or there are many studies that also show that consumers are not willing to pay more than 10% of the price of the product for the repair. So there are some trade-offs that we need to consider when we go for a repairability initiative. In terms of principles for us, for the future initiative, the key words are the repair needs to be safe, secure, reliable, and justifiable. And justifiable because repairability should not be considered as an absolute. If it is not feasible or if it's disproportionate, because it can also be unsustainable to keep prolonging the life cycle of a product, then other options need also to be considered. And we also need to have our consumers and us, I'm also a consumer, to also be ready not to get rid of the product when it's still working, because this is still happening. Or when the repair option is put in front of him, that he prefers to go for a replacement. So these also are things that need to be taken into account. Two remaining thoughts in the remaining minute and a half that I have. One thought is on deserts. We risk having in Europe a manufacturing desert, because with all the crises that we're having, I'm not going to name them because we all are aware of what is happening, we are risking having companies either dislocating or stopping production simply because they cannot access the goods to be able to manufacture. The prices of electricity are 5-7 times more. So it's becoming very complicated for companies to be able to have a breathing space to continue to function and to survive. So it is very important that when we go for new initiatives that we take into account the timing, the proportionality and the compatibility of all these measures put together. And a second and final thought, we also, from the business side, we get a little bit confused about the legislative process, because if we look at the draft report that is stemming from this committee, it is already entering into the territory of the right to repair that the supposed Commission proposal will cover. So there are many amendments that are already covering this space. So we are wondering whether if we need a directive from the Commission, because the Parliament is already taking this forward. So I stay here and very happy to have an exchange on all these points. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pedro. Next, I would like to ask Mr. Orla Butler from European Environmental Bureau to take the floor, please.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you to the committee and the organisers for inviting us here today. My name is Orla Butler. I work on the Circular Economy team at the European Environmental Bureau, which is a founding member and steering group member of the Right to Repair Europe campaign. Next slide, please. So to give an overview of the campaign itself, we are a coalition of European organisations and businesses active around the cause of repair in Europe since 2019. We are based in several European countries and we represent a diverse range of stakeholders, including environmental organisations, sustainable businesses, social economy actors, and any citizen who would like to advocate for their right to repair. And as you can see with our steering group members along the bottom, this is a very diverse range of actors, all of whom have the right to repair at the heart of our campaign. And our movement is overarchingly to make repair affordable, accessible, and mainstream throughout Europe. Next slide, please. So there's so much at stake when it comes to the right to repair, and there's so many different angles as we have seen with the range of actors that are interested in the campaign. This covers many different angles apart from simply the environmental benefits. So, for example, from the consumer perspective, using products for as long as possible leads to consumer savings in the long term if price is indeed tackled through legislation, as we have discussed with other panel members. Repairing brings people closer to their devices, it boosts technological literacy, and it empowers remote communities who do not have access to the manufacturers in larger cities. And this desire for consumers to increase their repairability is displayed by the fact that 77% of EU consumers would rather repair than buy new goods. Of course, we've mentioned multiple times already the environmental benefits that stem from repair. This is in line with the European Green Deal, the Circular Economy Action Plan, and the EU waste hierarchy. Repairing overall leads to a more efficient use of resources and reduces the growth of e-waste, of which only 17% of e-waste is recycled globally, which, although this number is significantly higher in Europe. Finally, businesses are key to our campaign, and we really wish to promote sustainable business models. For example, by making repair easier through EU policies, this would create a competitive market that does not exist today, leading to many local skilled jobs in Europe, as repairing cannot be outsourced, such as manufacturing that can come from further afield. A good illustration of the potential of repair and refurbishing businesses would be our campaign member Swappy, which was named the fastest growing company in Europe in 2022, according to the Financial Times. So there really is so much at stake when it comes to repair, and so much potential for us to tap into this sector that has not yet been given enough opportunity. And the sustainable consumption of goods, promoting repair and reuse, is part of this, a piece of the puzzle. As we have described, there's a really holistic need to approach repair throughout different policy instruments that I don't need to go into again. So on the next slide, I'd like to discuss specifically the Sustainable Consumption of Goods initiative. So within the legal guarantee, we recommend that repair should be made the primary remedy in the case of non-conformity of a product. What's really important to us is that it's really clearly defined when a repair or replacement will take place, and for any reason, if the product absolutely has to be replaced, all products should be returned to the manufacturer and really put back into the circular economy loop, dismantled, their spare parts used to go back into businesses, repair, refurbish, and make new products, instead of going to waste if they have been replaced. Regarding the extension of the legal guarantee, as was a policy option, for this, if repair is not made the primary remedy throughout the longer period of a guarantee, it's important that products cannot continue to be replaced as they are today. And if the guarantee is extended, it should also still allow for independent repairers to work on devices. And this extension of the guarantee should not be the sole focus of this initiative. We really need to foster repair outside of the guarantee. And then this would also lead to increased flexibility and options for consumers, as well as creating competition with repair businesses and independent businesses. Next slide, please. Beyond the legal guarantee is also a very important time to promote repair. For this, we recommend a separate policy instrument be introduced for this to allow to ensure that the issue is tackled correctly. For example, consumers should always have a right to repair solution, whether that be through repair registries where they are pointed towards a repair solution, even if it's outside the manufacturer's network. This would again increase the competition of local repair businesses. This is done through increased access to spare parts and repair information that should be provided to the repairers so that they can actually do a proper job on repairing their products. As of now, it's difficult to access information. For spare parts can be too expensive. They can be solely in the hands of the manufacturer. And so third-party spare parts or second-hand spare parts must be enabled to be used. And this can still be done in a very safe manner. And this, again, creates opportunities for market solutions that are not there today. Sorry, my apologies. So measures should finally be taken to ensure the affordability of repair. As we did mention multiple times today, it's increasingly difficult for repairers to access affordable spare parts that make sense for consumers to go towards a repair solution as opposed to simply replacing one or buying a new one. And we recommend that this is done through placing limitations on the price of spare parts, increasing transparency with regards to the price of spare parts, and indeed making price a criterion of a European repair index when it does indeed come. The next slide, please. And so additional policy options are also needed to foster a complete right to repair throughout Europe beyond the legal guarantee as well. For this, we recommend financial incentives to fully ensure the affordability of repair. And for this, we can look to some EU member states, such as Austria and Germany, who have introduced repair vouchers and VAT exemptions, which is, as is in the case in Sweden. Another good practice from a national level would be the French Repair Score Index that includes price of spare parts as a criterion of the the French Repair Score, and this really enables consumers to really choose what product is going to be repaired in the long term, as price is the main determinant in their choice of whether or not to repair or to replace. Finally, if this legislation is to truly be a safety net to ensure the right to repair, there are certain techniques that are barriers to repair for independent repairers today. This includes parts pairing, which is a software technique that is used that prevents repair outside the manufacturer's network, as parts are serialized to the overall device, and then this practice should be banned horizontally, as it inhibits independent repairers and consumers from repairing their products today. So the final slide, please. I'd just like to reiterate that we are very grateful to be here today and to present this opportunity for this great initiative. We really hope to see the initiative as soon as possible, as there has been some national initiatives that have been put on hold, such as the German Action Programme on Repair, as we are waiting for this proposal. So thank you very much again.
Thank you very much, Orla, for your presentation. I'm so sorry. I'm putting you under the time pressure, but all the speakers, they have to respect much more our interpreters than me with my rules. So they are not able to translate when speakers are speaking too fast. So, but thank you very much for your presentation. Our next speaker will be online from SME United, and our speaker will be Guido Lehner. Guido, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, first of all, to the IMCO committee for the invitation. Next slide, please. I think I will repeat here a couple of important messages from my previous colleagues. So it's important to, if we want to facilitate repair, to make it actually cheaper and easier to be found on the market. So either through facilities for consumers like vouchers, as it was already said, or also lower VAT. It's also important that we keep informing consumers of the current rights that they already have, and also on the impact on the environment of their choices. So these, I think, are fundamental issues if we want to start to have a better repair in our society. Next slide, please. Now, for the legal instrument, we think that the new right to repair shouldn't be introduced through amendments of the Sale of Goods directives. Because this directive has just come into force in 2022, so this year, as it was already said. SMEs have made a lot of investment to comply with this deadline. Now, if we just push the deadline again, this is going to cause uncertainty, disrupt planning. This is what happens now regularly at European level, that new deadlines are constantly being introduced, and this delays investment, make company unsure, and so this in the end can be counterproductive. So it would be better if we use instruments which have already been proposed and mentioned, like, for example, eco-design or anyway non-legal initiative to work consumers. Next slide, please. Now, if we talk about the possibilities that the online consultation gave, we are definitely in favor of repair as primary remedy, but also to determine the repair as the consumer remedy when it costs less or it's equal to replacement. We are more skeptical about, for example, longer guarantee period after repair, because this would mean that basically the guarantee would be prolonged forever with no predictability, and also longer guarantee periods for new and second-hand goods for different reasons. One can be that the trader, the guarantee that actually the trader gives to the consumer could be different from the ones that the manufacturers give to the trader. So in this case, the trader would be exposed to a period of time when he's got no guarantee and he should buy new guarantee on the market. This would mean that the price of the product that he offers becomes more expensive, or it doesn't offer this product any longer, so this would be a disadvantage for the consumer. The same goes for repair products. We risk that there are few on the market, and so a part of the population that would rely on repair products would have lesser choice. We are also totally against the idea of extending the guarantee framework in cases where, for example, of normal wear and tear or mishandling of products by the consumer itself. We think that this would be a huge burden on manufacturers, and this would also discourage consumers' behavior. It's important that we keep the responsibility in all the supply chain, including consumer. So for some specific cases like these ones, there shouldn't be any specific guarantee. Next slide, please. Now, it's a very important point. This is also, has already been mentioned, is repairers, and particularly independent repairers. They are essential for the right to repair to be widespread and to guarantee more competition and choice to consumers. So in this case, they should receive from manufacturers all the information, the software, the tools, and the parts that they need to repair, and these in reasonable time and also at fair price. There's also a shortage of skilled workers on the market, and member states should do something to fill this in order to not to hamper and delay the repair services in the EU. Thank you. Next slide, please. And there's also an issue of the right to regress. Despite the fact that this is allowed for the European legislation, in the end, generally the final traders, who is normally an SME, has a lot of difficulty to have the right to regress from the manufacturers, because it can be in another member states with different implementation, and there's also these disproportional relations between the big manufacturers and the small traders. So in the end, it would be better if this right to regress would be regulated better and more precisely at European level, with the same implementation in all the member states, also to guarantee traders, which are in most cases SMEs. And also in this case, we have no problem with the direct liability of supplier manufacturers for claims under the legal guarantees, but the final seller always be the main point of contact for consumers. This should be an advantage both for consumers, which doesn't have to track down the manufacturers, but also for the seller, because as an SME, it's your advantage to be known by your customers. Next slide, please. So, in a nutshell, we definitely welcome and we're in favor of the right to repair, but this should be in a certain way fair, balanced, without putting too many burdens on the manufacturers. And we have to be sure that repair goes along with product safety, intellectual property and liability, as my colleague from Business Europe, Pedro, has already mentioned. So these were our main ideas and proposals. Thank you very much, and I'm available for questions or discussion.
Thank you very much. Next, I would like to ask Laia Kamps from Generation Climate Europe to take the floor, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you from all Generations Climate Europe for the opportunity that has given us today to speak in presence of this committee. I am Laia Kamps. I am co-leading the digitalization working group at GCE. GCE is the biggest coalition of youth-led networks in the European level. We advocate for green and just transition, and we put intergenerational justice at the core of our work. More specifically, in the digitalization working group that I am co-leading, we stand for youth involvement in European policymaking for the digital sector. At the moment, we are working on several projects that concern sustainability of softwares, hardwares, and digital devices, and data management. Our fundamental position is that we need to integrate a circular economy approach on the digital sector. In the past, we have provided the Commission with several opinions on initiatives such as the Sustainable Products Initiative, the Right to Repair Initiative, the Digital Product Passport, among others. We want to start our speech by saying that we welcome further initiatives by the Parliament and the Commission to better integrate the circular economy in digital sectors. In the circular economy that we want to build on the future of Europe, youth involvement is fundamental. Motivations to pay special attention to youth in the EU's policy become even stronger when digitalization comes into play. We are the first generation to grow up in a fully digitalized environment, and we are major consumers of digital services. As such, the engagement of young people is crucial if we want to achieve both growth and sustainability, and if we want compliance and meaningful implementation of the norms impacting design, production, and finally, waste management and recyclability. Including youth is important not just for the present, but also for the future. As to this, youth will set the example for what future generations demand, shaping consumption patterns and behaviors for years to come. The priorities of young consumers are to have devices that are reliable and durable at first, and that can be repaired affordably afterwards. One of the key solutions to the problem of e-waste is to increase lifespan of digital devices. A study by the European Environmental Bureau has proven that extending the use of digital technologies by one more year, and I quote, would save the EU as much carbon emissions as taking 2 million cars off the roads annually. By extending the life of your laptop, for example, by 2 to 4 years, can decrease your carbon footprint by 50%. At GCE, we believe that the basis of circularity in the digital sector is the eco-design and sustainable design at first. This is why we welcome the recent Sustainable Products Initiative, in which the new eco-design regulation and eco-design requirements are defined. The fact that the scope of products has been broadened, including other products besides energy-related, and the fact that the initiatives to cover the whole life cycle of products makes it a good start to put eco-design at the core of circular economy efforts, especially in the digital sector. However, when eco-design fails, the right to repair is fundamental. Here, youth can play a dual role. It can be engaged in the repairs themselves, and it can be better informed on its consumer choices to avoid unnecessary consumerism. Good steps forward are already being made with the Commission's proposal for the recast of the eco-design directive, but more actions are needed. In this context, we are suggesting including youth as an active stakeholder in the future legislative initiatives regarding the right to repair, with dedicated programs, but also with explicit references of youth as stakeholders in any further legislative outcome of the initiative. Youth can play an active role especially in community and infrastructure building. And its digital competencies and skills can be used to foster youth employment. Incentivizing an active role for young people in the green transition is a priority by making them part of the construction and the management of, for instance, workshops, repair cafes. In order to make repairs easier, accessible and inclusive with the spare parts available, create jobs for small, medium enterprises led by youth by developing and fostering their digital skills, and promote a circular economy across all sectors of society. To do so, we need a strong focus on youth to be included in any initiative that might be taken in the future. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is representing French Directorate General for Competition, Consumers and Fraud Control. Ms. Helene Heron, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you. I will do my presentation in French, if it works. So, bonjour à tous.
Good afternoon, everyone. The anti-waste legislation from February 2020 in France allows us to respond to a number of concerns. The sound level is very low. The interpreter is struggling to follow, but we'll do her best. We have a number of measures on a number of different subjects. The right to information, which was allow us to take action against planned obsolescence of products and combat waste. We've got a list of repairs for electric and electronic products. The interpreter apologizes, but the sound level is insufficient for interpretation and there's too much distortion.
Donc l'information des consommateurs finalement sur l'existence et la disponibilité des pièces détachées, elle est encadrée donc au niveau du droit français depuis 2014 et elle a été étendue donc par cette loi en 2020 à leur indisponibilité. Next slide. Donc le fabricant ou l'importateur se doit d'informer donc le vendeur professionnel de la période finalement de disponibilité des pièces détachées qui sont donc indispensables à l'utilisation des biens concernés ou, le cas échéant, de leur non-disponibilité. En l'absence d'information, les pièces détachées peuvent être réputées non disponibles donc pour certains équipements. Et le vendeur donc répercute alors ces informations au niveau du consommateur. Dans un délai de 15 jours, donc un fabricant ou un importateur se doit de fournir au vendeur professionnel ou au réparateur les pièces détachées qui seront ensuite indispensables à l'utilisation des biens vendus. Donc pour certains équipements, notamment donc l'électroménager ou les articles de loisirs, la disponibilité devra être au minimum de 5 ans. De plus, pour certaines prestations, le professionnel doit prévoir des offres qui vont donc inclure les pièces qui seront elles-mêmes issues de l'économie circulaire. Et bien sûr, donc, le non-respect de cette réglementation pourra être sanctionné d'amende administrative. Next slide. Donc, lorsqu'un consommateur finalement va demander la mise en œuvre de la garantie légale de conformité, il va avoir le choix entre le remplacement ou la réparation. Next slide. Et donc, avec la loi donc, que je mentionnais en introduction relative à l'économie circulaire en 2020, il y a eu la mise en place finalement de 2 mesures qui vont favoriser finalement le choix de la réparation qui ont été mises en place. Donc la première, c'est dans le cas où un consommateur va solliciter une réparation de son bien, mais que finalement le vendeur lui propose son remplacement. Alors finalement le nouveau bien obtenu par le consommateur va bénéficier d'un renouvellement de la garantie légale de conformité, donc pour une durée de 2 ans en France. Deuxième mesure, c'est lorsqu'un consommateur finalement lui va faire le choix de la réparation. Son bien va du coup bénéficier d'un allongement de la durée de garantie pour une période de 6 mois. Next slide, please. Donc, depuis 2015 en France, la pratique donc, de l'obsolescence programmée constitue une infraction pénalement répréhensible. Next slide.
Excusez-moi, nous n'avons pas de traduction.
I apologize, says the chair. We're not getting interpretation. The interpreters reiterate that this is because of the sound quality of the speaker's connection. Perhaps your connection is poor, says the chair. Could you speak in English?
Continue in English. So the French law extend this prohibition of planned obsolescence to prevent the reparation of a tool, or to try to improve restoration. So in France, we received three complaints since 2015. So I mentioned just one of them, a complaint from Apple. It deals with, it was in fact penal transaction concluded with the French ministry in 2020 for 25 million euro. And in fact, the consumer who have a iPhone, they were not informed that some update of the system of their smartphone will lead to a kind of a slow functionment of their smartphone. So next slide. So I will now present you some information about the repairability index for electrical and electronical products. So it's a very good information for the consumer, and this index until 10 is put on the product on the sales place. Next slide, please. So we had so 5 criteria who are used to define this index in France. So the documentation is the fact that the producer to give some information related to the reparation for the consumer. The second point is disassembly. In fact, the ease of disassembly and access tools and fasteners. The third aspect is the spare parts availability, and in fact the score is established in relation to the commitment of the producer on the duration of the spare part availability and on the delivery time. And then you have the price of spare parts, and some specific criteria are also taken into account to define, in fact, a number, and the number is used to appreciate this repairability index. And this index, in fact, was built with many stakeholders, so manufacturers, distributors, consumer association in France, and this index is now used on 9 types of electrical and electronical products. So they are mentioned on my slide. So you have different kind of products. And this index is controlled by the French administration if it's available at the point of sales, for example, and if the manufacturer is able to justify the repairability index score. And we also put in place some really specific control. So next slide. So the concept of refurbished products, which is a really specific categories of products in French. So next, thank you. So the goal is to encourage the development of this second-hand goods market. So I put the definition under the French Consumer Code of this concept of refurbished products. So you need to have done some tests regarding the different functionalities of the products, and the product has to do the correct purpose for which the consumer requires this good. And this was a real necessity for us to clarify this concept. And in 2020, for example, in France, almost 3 million of smartphones, which was a refurbished product, have been sold in France. Next slide, please. So maybe in the framework of the future initiatives of the Commission on reparation, we can share with you some proposals and reflections. Next slide, please. So the first one is the legal guarantee period of liability, and the fact to establish a kind of a unique period of legal guarantee period for all the kind of products, the new run and the second-hand goods, to remove the possibility for second-hand goods to have a reduced legal guarantee period. The second proposal is to systematize the reversal of the burden of proof and to put it to 2 years for the new product. The goal is to increase the reparation. In fact, if you delete the possibility to reduce it to 1 year, and more globally, in fact, the France encourage all politics allowing a more important repairability of products. In fact, all the initiatives which lead to reparation, to refurbishment of products, and then, in fact, we need to put in place a correct framework at European level. It's important to give some tools for the consumer to deal with ecological transitions, and we really need to, in fact, prohibit the premature obsolescence by the European right. And so we are in favor of all those kind of politics allowing more reparation and repairability in France. Next slide. It's finished. Thank you, and sorry for my English because I really prepare my presentation in French.
Merci beaucoup pour votre.
Thank you very much for that presentation.
Let's have just one round of questions. First, we will take all the questions, and then our experts they will try to reflect, to respond. So, first in our speakers list is Tomislav Sokol from EPP Group.
Thank you.
2 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Consumers constantly contact me complaining that their devices break down immediately after the legal guarantee expires, that the spare parts needed for repair are not available, and that repair, in addition to being time-consuming, is often very expensive. Most often, they mention the breakdown of mobile phones, washing machines, and other household devices. In addition, they tell me that the devices that their parents or even grandparents used are still working, while the new ones are breaking down faster and faster. On the other hand, research has shown that 77% of EU citizens would rather repair their devices than replace them. And in this regard, the European Parliament has so far adopted 2 resolutions which specifically asked the European Commission to propose an overall legislative package that will solve the problems with product repair which citizens face every day. After we finally managed to introduce common charger, we now have to fight for the right to repair. We want consumers to receive information at the point of sale about the expected durability and repairability of the product to enable them to make an informed purchasing decision. Having said that, first, has the European Commission carried out an impact assessment on the right to repair, and are there any other problems apart from the ones I mentioned that consumers face when repairing the device? Second, does the European Commission plan to add practices that unduly restrict the right to repair or lead to obsolescence to Annex 1 of the Unfair Commercial Practices Directive? And 3, what information does BEUC, as the umbrella organization for consumer protection in the EU, have on planned product obsolescence? Do consumers also report such practices to you? And what is your proposal for solving the problem with planned product obsolescence? Thank you.
Thank you, Tomislav. And the next speaker will be online. Christel Schaldemose, please. The floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much. And I do hope that you can hear me, even though I'm online. Anyway, thank you very much for all the presentations. They have been very, very interesting. And I think that we realized that there is a very big interest in making a right to repair and find ways to do it, but also, of course, looking into what we can do to do it workable also for the business side. So I mainly would like to ask questions to the Commission, and so I hope that goes, even though Ms. Gallego has left. First and foremost, I have to say that I'm sad that that we still haven't seen the proposal, but I'm happy to hear that it will come in the first quarter of 23. However, that is really relatively late if we would like to finalize the proposal before end of this mandate. Secondly, have you been considering, for instance, the link between the eco-design and the durability and guarantee period? Have you been considering what to do there? And also this repair index that we just heard about, is that something we could also have at a European level? I think that could be interesting to know. But first and foremost, thank you everyone, and I hope that we will be able to deliver a right to repair for consumers and find a way also to at the same time help the companies, because I do believe that in the long run this will also benefiting the companies. Thank you very much.
Christel, the next question is coming from Renew Group. Sandro Cozzi, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Chair. My main comment that we have to really ensure a freedom of choice, and right to repair is a freedom of choice, and it is maybe it is mentioned in the legal text, but is not actually implemented. Freedom of choice means that we shouldn't exclude anything, the right of a consumer to buy a new product or to replace it, but we shouldn't even exclude the minor replacement. We have to really ensure for a consumer the freedom to choose. And for this, it is clear that new intervention, both legal and operational intervention, are needed. The first, my first 2 questions are to the Commission. The first is how they will ensure coherence between the 3 texts which are concerned: eco-design, empowering consumers, and right to repair. And also I would like me too to emphasize the need to accelerate the presentation of the right to repair. The other question are to our experts. How do they think we should distribute the liability linked to the right of repair between the different economic operators in the value chain? There is a need to distribute the liability or not, and if there is, how they would proceed. And the second question to our expert is also linked to the last presentation. The Commission is proposing a voluntary labelling. Do our experts consider that introducing a mandatory labelling linked to multi-criteria life cycle environmental performance index might be more efficient and more user-friendly for the consumers? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sandra. Now I would like to ask Anna Cavazzini to take the floor, please.
Yeah, hello, greetings from Prague, where I'm actually representing the IMCO committee at a conference of the Czech presidency. So I think it's great that we have the opportunity for this remote participation because, yeah, like this, I also could follow the debate and all the presentations, the excellent presentations by the stakeholders. I'm very, very happy that all the stakeholders, I think, share our vision as IMCO committee that we need a fast, very encompassing and effective right to repair. And thanks also to all of you who refer to our resolution that we worked on. What I find really, really interesting, and some of you mentioned it, is the price question, because I mean, all the other proposals we heard and we also included in our resolution are for me very obvious. I think a lot of these proposals, extension of legal guarantee and so on, have to be in the right to repair. For me, it's still not 100% clear how we can tackle the price issue, because indeed, when consumers don't repair, it is often because it's too expensive or too expensive in relation to a new product. Of course, the EU cannot dictate the prices. This is completely clear. The EU can also probably not do something on the VAT. This is on national level. But I wonder if this idea that was also proposed by one of you, that we really limit the prices of the spare parts is a way to go. What I find also interesting is what the colleague from SME United said, and this is what I hear from a lot of repairers and meeting all over Europe, that access to the information and access to all the repair information for the bigger companies is very crucial. So that all the SMEs, all the small repair shops, they need access to the information by the bigger companies. Otherwise, they cannot repair the product. And I want to, probably you to elaborate more on how we can achieve this. And last question to the French representative, because you said you banned already planned obsolescence. I would be interested if you could go a little bit more into detail, explaining how this exactly is working, because of course I'm getting told by some companies it's very difficult to prove what is really planned obsolescence. How to exactly regulate this in France? Greetings from Prague again.
Thank you very much, Anna. Now I would like to ask, does somebody who is representing the ID group to take the floor? No, I can't see. The same question about ECR. Is here somebody representing ECR who wants to take the floor? No, once again. Then I would like to ask Anne-Sophie Pelletier to take the floor, please.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président, et un grand merci.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much to all the speakers for those very interesting and crucial presentations, and thank you all for being here. I'm very pleased about what we're discussing at this table round, which I feel very strongly about it. Product reparation is a way of reducing our consumption and reducing waste, and so nonetheless, instead of being a reflex, the consumer's first choice is not necessary to resort to reparation, nor is it encouraged by companies. We're going to have to rethink about all of our capitalist economic model, which has a huge impact on consumers and protection of the planet, pushing companies to want more and more profit and adopt marketing messages which are aggressive, and the consumers have to buy new products rather than repair them, and they don't always have enough information when purchasing their products, and they're not informed about their rights. And as was previously stressed, in INCO we voted on a resolution motion for the right to reparation, which our President Anna brought. It was very ambitious text, hopefully to reorient the Commission's work and lead to concrete proposals. The text said that 79% of the consumers think that manufacturers should make product reparation easier and were replacing of digital products, and only 17% wanted to keep the possibility of replacing. But the right to repair is very important, and therefore manufacturers and traders must provide clear, reliable, accessible, and comprehensible information before purchase to guarantee sustainability. We've got to be able to say how long the product is to last, and a planned obsolescence is a huge scourge, and we must be able to get rid of this in a harmonized way, and we've got to fight these expensive reparations. Consumers must have all the information they need on reparation services and the spared parts. They must be easy to find and must be sold at affordable prices. Now, if repairing your product costs more than buying a new one, you're not going to choose repair. And therefore, we have been pushing consumers toward that choice for better transition and planning. I hope the Commission will take on board these elements to enrich their proposals on consumers' rights. And to finish, I'd like to thank Mrs. Iron for her presentation. The English presentation, it was not easy. It was not always easy when you're asked to speak English. Thank you for being so adaptable. And I'd like to know what kind of room for maneuver the national authorities have to force the companies to meet their obligations with respect to product planned obsolescence, and how can we act to detect this product and prove that voluntary obsolescence is actually inherent to the product. Thank you.
I'd like to ask, is somebody here in the room waiting for catch the eye time to raise questions? No one. Then let's take the same order as in a first round for experts, and I would like to ask Ms. Salla Saastamoinen from the European Commission to take the floor, please.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to the honourable members of those questions and observations. And I also appreciate to hear all the other experts in this first round. I think that the questions bring quite much to the attention that we are dealing in the area where we have several pieces of legislation where we aim to make a coherent framework to promote the right to repair, to promote the circular economy. For example, the early obsolescence that was raised by the honourable members, that is dealt with by the Empowering Consumers initiative, which is amending the unfair consumers commercial practices directive to tackle this type of the practices. Then there was a question about the link to eco-design legislation, and indeed the eco-design legislation will look at the product design phase. We are closing then the remaining gaps with the future proposals. For example, closing those gaps that are there on the after-sales phase. So we are really aiming to ensure coherence with these existing legislation, those proposals that are on the table, and then with the future proposal. There was a question that whether there is the impact assessment. Indeed, the impact assessment process is going on, and I heard today about the difficulties that the consumers and then has met, including inconveniences in the repair process. And this is all that we are now then aiming to take into account in our proposal. These inconveniences, they can relate to the lacking information or then to the price. And what we try to bring there is to have more transparency, for example, quotes on the price so that there's information, and make it easier to compare then the offers. So that type of the competitive approach also within the repair services is then part that we need to bring forward. Mentioning about the repairability or the European label for the repairability, then I go back a little bit to this eco-design legislation, which is already bringing certain rules on the certain product groups. So those, it comes by then group by group or sector by sector. Possibly they're starting with the smartphones and tablets. So this is coming from the one perspective. So maybe this type of the aspects also remembering the coherence, and that we are indeed then aiming to take into account these comments. We have received a lot also through the public consultation round that we are carrying is part of the impact assessment. But my final reassurance is that the process is advancing well inside of the Commission, and we are indeed aiming for the proposal to be there in the beginning of next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Ursula Pachl from BEUC. The floor is yours, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to respond, first of all, to the question of premature obsolescence. I think it was Mr. Sokol who asked. The question was whether we have evidence about premature obsolescence. And I think I mentioned in the beginning of my presentation that we have a project which is called Prompt Project, which is exactly testing products and gathering complaints from European consumers in several countries. And what we can conclude from there is definitely what you mentioned, what consumers report to you is also what our members experience, namely that products today, they do not last very long often, and that they seemingly are not as durable as potentially they used to be in the past. So it is very important to address this problem. We heard the European Commission and indeed have already addressed the problem to a certain extent in the empowerment proposal with listing 6 practices that should be banned. We would like to go a step further, so this is also a call on the European Parliament to be more ambitious, because we need to have a general ban on the practice of premature obsolescence, not only on not informing consumers about the fact that this may be a product that does not last, because this is currently what the unfair commercial practices holds, is about informing consumers correctly, and if you don't, you mislead and then it's prohibited. But we want the practice as such to put these type of products on the market that must be prohibited. I think this is very important. And there is no, there should not be intent that is required, because this is also one of the problems, that this is not something that must be planned obsolescence. It must be simply premature obsolescence that must be banned. I mean, we have a position paper with all specific details of what needs to be changed in the empowerment proposals, and I would be happy to share that. Link is also in our presentation at the very end of the presentation. Secondly, in terms of the price, I think it was Mrs. Cavazzini asking for that. Let me make one point, which I think is fundamentally important. If we do not increase the durability in terms of giving the consumers the right to it through the legal guarantee proposal, we will just have 2 years of guarantee for everybody, for all products. And if the product fails after 2 years, consumers will have to pay for the repair. But what would be fair and just would be that the legal guarantee period is expanded for durable products, and in that durable guarantee period, consumers have a right to a free repair. And this is the only way how we really can make a difference with promoting repair. It should not be at the back of consumers that we promote repair. Right to repair must come with a better legal guarantee period. This is just a fundamental issue that I would like to put on your radar. And the price of repair, indeed, that is something that we must be carefully consider. We think that with making repair more accessible, making information more accessible, with consumers having a real quality repair in their closer environment, this should be able also to bring down the prices. But of course, intellectual property rights make also a big part of that. The liability, joint liability, also for repair, of course, within the legal guarantee framework, that would mean the producer is also responsible if the consumer chooses, and I underline, the consumer must choose to go for repair. And then I would like to underline also what Mrs. Schaldemose asked about. It's really time, and I would again encourage the Commission to make that step, to link the eco-design requirements to the consumer rights. For example, we are asking also for remedies for consumers in case eco-design requirements are not met. That is just a very logical step to make, and it will help to incentivize the market players to deliver durable products. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ursula. Some members asked during the meeting about what kind of movie we were talking about an hour ago. You can easily find this video clip from YouTube, typing Beuk and stop geo-blocking. Okay, waiting for new movies. Next, I would like to ask Pedro Oliveira from Business Europe to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I hope that Business Europe one day will become eligible as well for the Oscars of the best clip or the best movies. At least my communications department works very hard on it. There were no really questions addressed to Business Europe specifically, but just to focus on a few points that have been raised by the honourable members of this committee. There was a fundamental question about how do we assess then the liability on the right to repair. Because if we want to make it open to anyone, including the consumers and even non-certified repairers, then the liability that needs to be shifted. And then this is a whole can of worms that needs to be opened, and it's not going to be easy to assess this. I heard about the possibility of having a label that includes a lot of information around life cycle, around sustainability, around all the sorts of things. Of course, it's the eternal discussion to have one single label that captures everything. Of course, this represents a lot of problems or challenges, because some of the information might be confusing, contradictory. To verify it, to enforce it, to read and understand it will become quite a big challenge. But of course, the multiplication of labels that we see in Europe nowadays is also problematic. So I think the answer must be somewhere in the middle. On limiting prices on spare parts, as I mentioned in my intervention, companies are already under extreme difficult circumstances right now, with 7 times that they have to pay more for their electricity prices. Value chains are in shatters nowadays. And of course, we have new legislation that is coming. One of those legislation is being treated by this committee, the forced labor ban, and also the due diligence. And on both occasions, companies will be forced to decouple, will be forced to cut on primary materials to be able to produce even, or even to access those spare parts. So at the end of the day, this is all will be also about trade-offs that we will need to come to terms with. Then also to make a distinction, it's important to make a distinction between the legal guarantee and the repairability. Because legal guarantee, I mean, even the Commission was doing its fitness check a few years ago, and it discovered that most of the problems occur in the first 6 months from a buying of a product. This is in 70% of the cases, and up to the first year, 90%. So we need to be clear what we are talking about here. because repairability is about the service, and beyond the legal guarantee, of course, this should be encouraged, and that we should find the best solutions to make it accessible. But of course, this needs to be done with some balance. And then final word about courage. This committee is the champion of the internal market. And we've been witnessing a lot of problems in the last years that we go for minimum harmonization directives on a lot of fields. You had the courage. I mean, I look at Mr. Arimon, who championed the Sale of Goods Directive, and it was possible to keep the full harmonization approach. And we hope that this is guaranteed not only on the right to repair, but on other initiatives that will stem still within this legislature. So for us, for the business side, it's very important to fight fragmentation and to keep the internal market intact. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I would like to ask Ms. Orla Butler from European Environmental Bureau now to take the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I would like to share some of the concerns that were expressed by members regarding the delays of this initiative, but we do really hope that this does ensure coherence with the other legislations that are coming, and so we hope that it will be indeed worth the wait in the end. Regarding the questions on premature obsolescence, indeed it is difficult to prove that this is a practice that is in place at the moment, but what we believe is that your right to repair stops where the manufacturer's right to make an unrepairable product takes place. And so as long as this is allowed, as long as you don't have the access or the right to the repair information, their spare parts, etc., then you don't entirely have the right to repair. And so indeed, the obsolescence will be regulated for in the upcoming Empowering the Consumers for the Green Transition, and we really hope that this is banned outright as opposed to currently being an information requirement that these practices are taking place, as we think that they should not be permissible in any way. With regards to the question on the price, we believe that there's a fundamental problem with the market if indeed replacing a good with an entirely new product is cheaper and more affordable for consumers than to repair the product. This, as I said, should be tackled. The price of spare parts really does need to be tackled, and it should be done through placing the price of spare parts as a criterion of the repair index. And there was a mention towards the smartphones and tablets a repairability label that was unveiled, which we really welcome. But however, we do regret the missed opportunity that the price of spare parts was not included. And so it will be difficult to foresee that this will really be a determining factor in a consumer's choice of whether to repair or to replace. Overall, I'd just like to finish because I'm conscious of time and I'm aware that other panellists still have yet to respond, that we do need increased information, increased support to repair businesses, and we are very conscious of all the different actors that are involved. And so again, I'd like to thank you so much for your participation today, and I'd like to move on to the next panellist. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, I would like to ask Ms. Laia Kamps to take the floor, please.
Yeah, so there were no really questions addressed to GCE, but just some bullet points. As it's been said, it's important to inform consumers across all sectors of society. Labeling also, it has to be easily accessible and better. It has to be clear for consumers to understand it and to enable them to make better choices. And also just state that it's important to include youth at any point of European legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I would like to ask Mr. Guido Lehner from SME United to take the floor. He is still connected online.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, first of all, a couple of words on liability for manufacturers. I think that there are clear cases where manufacturers cannot be liable. For example, if a consumer mishandled the product, if I take my mobile phone and I throw it against the wall, or I drop it in the toilet, I cannot ask the product to be repaired for free or replaced. The same goes for, I think, normal wear and tear. Once the years of guarantee have passed, the legal guarantee, and the product, which is not subject to premature obsolescence, started giving problems, either I repair it myself with my money or I buy a new one. It's impossible to overburden the manufacturers constantly with new requirements, with already all the burdens that are on them in the current situation. And it's a matter also of fairness. Everybody in the society takes its share of responsibility. Labels, if in case of a label, for example, for the repairability index, we would be in favor of having it linked together, integrated into, added into the energy label. Because in most cases, the repairability index we've seen in France, it deals with products which have already a sort of energy label, and having one or linked to the two would mean less confusion for the consumers, and also less or fewer bureaucracy and red tape for the manufacturers. And for repairs, in the end, there was a question from Mrs. Cavazzini. I can only reiterate that giving to independent repairers the tools, in any case, to perform the repair is essential. And if it's the case, it should also be introduced through specific rights. Otherwise, the whole thing will not work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, Helena Herron, the floor is yours, please.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe just a few comments. First of all, regarding the question of unplanned obsolescence. Yes, in France it's forbidden since 2015, and we have reinforced it in 2020. For sure, it's not easy to do the demonstration, but we have ongoing investigation on this issue. We consider in France that yes, it's not sufficient to demand correct information of the consumer regarding the practices of unplanned obsolescence. It's important to prohibit these practices. And maybe a last point to conclude regarding the legal guarantee period of liability. We consider it's a good idea to try to increase it for some kind of products, for example, major appliances, until, for example, 3 years.
Thank you very much. I would like to cordially thank all our experts, all the speakers. I'm sure we got much better understanding what the right to repair really means, and what we as legislators have to do to guarantee this right to our people. Thank you very much. And now we can move to our agenda point number 7. Corporate sustainability, due diligence and amending directive EU 2019-1937. Rapporteur for the opinion, Ms. Deidre Glune from EPP, consideration of compromise amendments. So now I would like to ask our rapporteur to take the floor.